renewables penetration into the electricity grid increases, what does this mean for electricity prices going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question, Skipp. Look, and it has its challenges. I think over the long term, there's no question it's lower cost, but in the near term, there may potentially be some volatility. Yeah. I mean, if we go back and really think about what goes into the cost of electricity, it's generation first and foremost, transmission and distribution, and then there's this thing called capacity charges, or called a variety of names depending on which market you're in, but it's really the cost to connect the grid, right, and get that 7x24 power. And so, that if you think about it from a generation perspective, renewables like solar and wind have really been proven to be the lowest cost provision of power today, and they're going to get cheaper. So in the long term, power will be cheaper, and that's definitely happening, right? So that can be driven by utility scale generation, like these large wind and solar projects we're seeing built, or actually can be on a small scale at the point of use, like rooftop solar or other so-called behind-the-meter self-generation options, which is sometimes also called distributed energy resources, right?
And I mean, playing it further forward, we'll see times, I assume, with significant amounts of renewable energy available as excess power. What do you see that opening up?
That's the challenge, right? And that's why maybe in the near term there's some volatility in what we see in pricing on the grid in certain markets, right? And that's because of that issue. That's how to supply firming power, or so-called firming power, when the wind is not blowing and the sun is not shining. The issue is today, the way that's fulfilled is through operating fossil fuel plants, gas-fired and coal plants, to meet that demand. And that's pretty expensive because they're designed to run on a continuous basis. And so they get to be a pretty high cost component of power.
Yeah, if you can take advantage of it, which means you're going to see these interesting industries sort of pop up and grow that are using that free cost electricity.
So renewables is coming in, it's lower cost, it's ultimately going to drive down the cost of your grid power.
Yeah, and then I guess the other interesting thing is there'll be times in the day, won't there, where there are large portions of renewable power, excess to the needs, which can be bought for effectively zero.
Absolutely.
And so that'll have some really interesting implications in terms of if a process is able to run intermittently, it could open up whole new industries.
Yeah, and how do you take advantage of that if you're a big power consumer today? How do you think about that in your overall energy strategy? Because you've got two objectives, right? One is to get your emissions down, so you need renewable power in your profile, and get the lowest cost option.